You're watching an Are We Done Yet feature presentation with host Rob Anthony.
I think a lot of this AI is going to get baked right into the tools that we're already using, and we're not even really going to see it there. So I think that's going to be something that's going to happen pretty quickly. It's going to go invisible and under the surface, and we're seeing it already.
Just a few words of wisdom, although one could qualify that as a stretch, from my heavily bearded friend Kris Krug, professional photographer and wannabe CEO of Motley Krug Media here in Vancouver. Santa joins us today to chat about degenerative AI, the long-term effects of colonialism on the neural networks of the subarctic pygmy llama, and the clear lack of beard oil that we see happening here today, a great subplot for the question the show will always ask. Are we done yet? Kris, thank you for stopping by.
Rob, the fact that you got my name right for once is almost as surprising as your talent for making colonialism sound like a light brunch topic. Thanks for noticing the beard. I was inspired by your recent attempts at hair growth. I guess some of us are just more gifted in that department. And as for being a wannabe CEO, I'll eagerly await your business insights right after I seek fashion advice from a man who thinks cargo shorts are haute couture. Can't wait to dive into today's chat, especially if it means steering clear from...
The preceding content has been verified by OHEY TV as a deep fake and utterly full of rubbish. To save you more of the time we've already wasted, we will return you to the beginning of today's episode. We thank you for...
You're watching an Are We Done Yet feature presentation with host Rob Anthony.
I think a lot of this AI is going to get baked right into the tools that we're already using, and we're not even really going to see it there. So I think that's going to be something that's going to happen pretty quickly. It's going to go invisible and under the surface, and we're seeing it already.
That was the voice of Kris Krug, CEO of Future Proof Creatives and renowned photographer, with us today to do a bit of a deep dive into deep fakes, AI in general, its risk versus rewards, if there are any. Kris, super cool to have you here. Thanks for coming by.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. This studio is really awesome. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a bit of a work in progress. It's also been a great source of procrastination.
You're gonna have to tell me the story of all these photos here. It seems like you chose them pretty intentionally.
I did. I tried to tell a story, so ironically, I'm choosing to tell a story via visual medium, like photographs.
Yeah.
We're doing that a little differently these days with AI. Right. So
that's for
theory,
sure. That's for sure.
At some point in the future, I could simply tell my living room to display a series of photos depicting this. And is that a little bit too far-fetched?
No, I mean, if that's what you want, I'm sure you could do it. Already today, there exists like screens that you can put on walls that look like picture frames and stuff. And I'm sure that we could talk to those things over Bluetooth, and I'm sure we could conjure up images using Mid Journey or Dolly and stick them up as art in your house.
Yeah. How long have you been working with programs like Dolly and Mid Journey? They've been around for a while.
They've been around for a while, but the explosion that we've seen happened about a year ago with the release of ChatGPT-4. That was really the big deal. And at the time, it wasn't doing images and stuff, but Mid Journey got a lot better with the last release as well. And so someone showed it to me last December, and I started messing with it. I'm a photographer, as you know, and so I started using it to generate some images, and I was trying to create, hyper-realistic type things, and I was pretty impressed with what it could do, but it would mess up faces quite a bit, and disfigured hands and stuff. Some of the intricacies of the human body it couldn't quite figure out still yet, and so I told my friend, if it can work out these things and a few other things, I could really see, this being quite useful in 10 years, or whatever. And like a month later, I called them back, and as things just keep rolling out all the time, new features, it's getting better really quickly and stuff. So, within a month, it was, where I thought it could be maybe 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And I was like, okay, and
it was already there.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
So I remember when I first heard about AI, and we all heard the Tom Cruise video. This is a clip provided by the same creator of that original clip, Tom Graham, at the TED Talk in Vancouver with a bit of a Canadian twist.
I'm north of the border, eh? At the TED conference. It's not short for Theodore, but nobody calls me Thomas, so it's cool. It's Tom at TED. Yes, Canada. Seriously though, everybody here, very nice, very polite, especially the whales.
So this is actually a follow-up. The original one, I think that was 2015, right? And it went a little something like this.
Yeah, I'll be right there, Steve. Hey, what's up, TikTok? Look, I do a lot of my own stunts, but I also do a lot of industrial cleanup, okay? It's important. So, obviously, you keep your hands clean, But you need that exfoliating product to really cut through the grime. Okay, just another tip for you talkers, or the TikTok tips. I'm getting too old for that. I don't. Internet.
The laugh, the way
It's incredible.
The way he nails that laugh.
Incredible.
But the thing is, with the originals, it was still a person speaking. Versus this is now what you showed me. It's all the text down to the laugh.
Yeah.
It just blows me away. At Elon Musk.
I just dropped like 150 milligram edible, and I'm feeling fucking zooted. Honestly, I'm feeling on the neck on the top floor right now. I'm about to design like 30 new fucking space cars and get us to Mars.
So you mentioned that you can tell that one's fake.
I can tell. Well, I can tell how that one's made.
Okay.
That looks like a webcam video of somebody who's not him with just his face mapped onto.
Okay.
Whereas the other one, the Tom Cruise one, it's harder to tell how they made that one. I think the process was probably a lot more intricate because you can see in that one, he's moving his hands and the motions in his hand motions are a lot like him. With the low-hanging fruit stuff, like the stuff I showed you how to do in HeyGen, you're supposed to limit your hand motions. You can't walk forward and backward. If you move around too much, like you notice if you watch my videos closely, now that you know they're deep fakes, when I wiggle, my beard starts to talk. Not just my lips, but you can see my beard. And it's because it's trying to map it up, but it kind of misses ever so slightly.
Right.
So that's one of the ways that you can kind of tell the techniques behind how the deep fakes are made. But the fancy, expensive ones, there's just no way you'll ever know. I've been seeing a lot of memes floating around the internet the last couple of days that's like Dolly a year ago, Dolly today, and they'll use the same prompt to generate. And it's remarkable. It looks like, grotesque child's play compared to like, fashion type imagery now and stuff. So it's incredible how far it's come in such a short period of time.
So in that, it's funny because you mentioned the fashion industry. And that's one of the first industries to start pushing back a little bit against the idea of AI.
Yeah.
Because we've seen ad campaigns that are using virtually generated models. And now the acting industry is talking about actor strike. That's fine. We are going to. So we're already in this space where it's moving so quickly that age-old question of what about my job is creeping up.
Yeah.
For you as a photographer, that you've done that for the most of your career, did you not feel a sense of, hang on a second, my job's at stake, or there's a challenge to my craft?
I think that's a great question because I think AI is definitely in the face of all creative professionals right now. It's like one by one, we're watching creative industries get eaten up by AI, whether it be writing or image making, design. Generative AI can do a lot of these things at a very, very high level. I've lived through a bunch of technological revolutions. I cut my teeth building websites, and then I was very early into kind of Web 2.0 and blogging and kind of that whole era of the internet and stuff. And so I didn't personally react like, oh my God, what about my career? My attitude is always kind of like, how can I use these emerging tools inside my studio? And so I was very much from the outset trying to tinker with it and learn about it. And, I use it all the time as a designer and a photographer, but I don't necessarily use it to make designs or photos all the time. I can use ChatGPT to do conceptualizing and brainstorming and stuff, or I can use another tool like Ideogram to do like logo work or patterns that I overlay on top of photos and stuff. So I find it super useful, not always in what is my actual product as a photographer, but in my process inside the studio.
So for you, it's doing what I think AI or programming in general is meant to do, which was reduce the mundane bits and pieces of what we do so you can focus on your core skill.
I think that that's part of it, man. And I think that that's how we approach it at first.
Yeah.
But it's gone much deeper than that for me. It's completely worked its way inside of me. And I've developed, a way of thinking about AI as kind of like a companion, or whatever. And
really?
So... I'm doing more than just having to eliminate the mundane tasks.
Right.
I feel like my creative power and my productivity and my output has been amplified tenfold. It's not just that I'm not doing bullshit work so I can focus on creative work. It's like I can do a whole bunch of different things that I could never do before.
Right.
From writing software to generating music. I wrote some lyrics, recorded my voice into 11 Labs, and then generated some AI generated music and pulled them all together. You know, I had released a rap song last week, you know, and I don't have any of those skills or whatever. So
what I'd like to do is show or let the audience hear some samples of what you played for me yesterday, which was a deepfake video
yeah,
in English and then multiple different languages.
Yeah.
I have something straight out of sci-fi to share with y'all today. Buckle up, because we're about to break down some serious language barriers and invite the world into our ever-evolving digital tribe.
こんにちは、皆さん。私はクリス・クルグと申します。バンクーバー、イストバンに住む多彩なプロフェッショナルです。自分自身をテックアーティスト、純先人、未来から来たサイバーパンク班のイドゥニャーと形容しています。मेरा नाम क्रिस क्रुग है, पर मेरे सभी हिंदी बोलने वाले दोस्त मुझे कृष्ण विश्वनाथ प्रिय धनवंशी कहकर बुलाते हैं। मैं कनाडा के ईस्ट वैन, वैंकूवर में रहता हूँ। मैं एक टेक आर्टिस्ट, साइबर पंक और मल्टी डायमेंशनल प्रोफेशनल हूँ।
Okay, so that blew my mind, right? Not only does it look like you and sound like you, but the languages.
It's incredible, right? Yeah, really something else, mind-bending.
How long did that entire process take?
Once I got to the point where I could make it, it didn't take that long, and used a bunch of off-the-shelf tools. You know, you've been able to make deepfakes for a long time, but it wasn't available to common people. You couldn't just go to a website, put in your credit card, pay the fee, and boom, you're off to the races. You had to develop a piece of software that only you had, and then you had to, you know, run it on a very fancy machine. It would be expensive and take a long time, but now you can do it very easily. And so ever since all this AI stuff started coming around, I've been trying to make a digital clone, essentially. And this is a step in the right direction. It's not all the way there, because I'd love it to be like a persistent digital clone that's like...
What does that mean?
It's alive out there somewhere, that guy you just saw in that video, you could go into a chat room and ask him a question or something like that in whatever language you want.
Absent any kind of control from you?
I think that'd be very interesting. Wow. I think I have this idea that I'd love to have a clone of myself that has read everything I've ever read, watched everything I've ever watched, but it doesn't know things that I haven't read, and it doesn't know things that I haven't watched. And it's, you know, been exposed to the photos that I've made, and essentially ingested my podcasts and my YouTube videos, and it essentially knows everything I know. And so when you ask it questions, it won't just regurgitate something out of a database. It will actually tell you probably what I might say as well, you know?
Right.
In some ways, I found that these things, you know, when you analyze a huge body of your work, like I put 1,000 pages of my writing into ChatGPT and had it analyze it and write a writing style guide. In that way, it knows me better than I know myself. I couldn't boil my 1,000 pages of writing down into 4 key principles of my writing style, but ChatGPT can. And I also fed it all my podcasts and my YouTube videos and told it to develop a worldview and perspectives document. Well, you think you know what you think about things, but if it actually ingests all your stuff and then kind of boils it down and compares to what other people think and says, here you are, man, it's almost like it kind of like knows you better than you know yourself in some ways, you know.
And in the process of doing that, was it right? Did it sum up?
Absolutely. I mean, this is how I used it for so long. I used it to start writing bios and to rewrite my web pages and stuff like that, because it was really able to synthesize large. I'm sure, you know, you're probably about my same age. I'm 45 years old, you know, and so like, you know, we've been around the block or whatever, right? And so sometimes it's hard to synthesize the whole arc that we've been on, you know, to take all these disparate components and weave a story through all that. But that's actually a pretty useful way of using AI.
So you touched on something there that, again, I don't want to become alarmist about the AI thing. I think with anything, within change management comes with a sense of fear and trepidation. But when asked about the emergence of AI chatbots, Noam Chomsky had this to say. Chatbots are marvels of machine learning, but also the banality of evil rebooted. Their deepest flaw is the absence of the most critical capacity of any intelligence to say not only what is the case, what was the case, and what will be the case, that's description and prediction, but also what is not the case, and what could and could not be the case. So that's a mouthful, but he's literally saying you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know, and the challenge that AI presents with that equation. So when I think about when I think about you saying that your future avatar that's out there that knows everything that you know and can make these decisions, it can't or can it be interactive enough to troubleshoot and to, as Chomsky says, know what it doesn't know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know that I'm going to have this thing making any decisions per se. I mean, who knows? At some point, we'll probably be like, hey, rent me an apartment in Miami to our digital companion, and it will have our credit card information, all, you know, the types of things we like, and it will actually just go out and make a decision and rent us an apartment in Miami.
But in that context, let's just use that as an example. So you're, what do we call it? Is it a virtual?
I don't know, people call it digital twin, I think, or like clone or virtual me. I don't know exactly,
Let's use digital twin.
Sure.
The whole word clone just seems to...
Yeah.
So your clone is out there working on an apartment lease in Florida.
Yeah.
It's not you. You're off in the mountains doing some photography. You're in Cortez Island. And the realtor asks a question that's relevant to finances. And basically it asks something that there's no way this twin could know.
Yeah.
What's the danger and risk or mitigation that we need to have in place for those types of unknowns?
I mean, if you're going to ask me these types of made up questions, I'm going to ask you, what type of information would it not know about me? What type of question? If it has read everything I've ever read, listened to every song I've ever listened to, read all my emails, read all my love notes, what possibly could you ask? I think you could ask it, how do you, it might not be able to know how I feel about something.
Right.
But then again, maybe it does. I'm not exactly sure.
Would that be an informed answer that the twin gave, or is that a guess?
I don't know. We're living way in the land of conjecture here, man.
Stephen Hawking adds to the concern with regards to AI by saying the following: I fear that AI may replace humans altogether. If people design computer viruses, someone will design AI that improves and replicates itself. This will be a new form of life that outperforms humans.
And, you know, I was telling a buddy yesterday, I think that it's really going to speed up as well, because most of the AIs we've seen right now have been written by humans. But we're about to see the next generation of AIs, and I think they're going to have written by people with AIs and AIs themselves. So I think things are really going to continue to accelerate. And I think that, like, our understanding of what's available to us is pretty cursory at the moment. This is like our first crack at it. And so I think that as our minds shift and about the possibilities, I think the types of things that are going to come are going to be extremely powerful and becoming really fast.
One of the things that my spiritual friends will talk about is that the importance of knowing our value, right? What is our purpose? And as you say things like perhaps it's the AI generating these things and the AI is doing the thinking for us, for some reason, my instinctive thought is, well, what about it? What's our purpose then? Mm-hmm. Does our idea of purpose need to shift as we look at AI?
I think absolutely it will. I think that a lot of people get a lot of their identity from their jobs and their work and their role and stuff. So I think a lot of those things are going to get eaten up by AI very quickly. And so then it does beg the question, who are you now? Mm-hmm. And I see that already across all the creative professional industries. I mean, imagine yourself being a filmmaker who hasn't made a film for, say, 5 years. And then you come to the table now, and the tools and the techniques are much different than they used to be. I mean, you can edit video now, audio and video, with text. It generates a transcript. You select a piece of the text, delete it, and that changes the audio and video. And so I think that it'd be pretty disorienting to be a filmmaker who hadn't made a film in 5 years to come into this landscape with all the crazy new AI tools and stuff. It'd be like, am I even a filmmaker? What am I? Where am I going with all this? And so I think that touches every single industry.
It does. It reminds me of the evolution of everything from 8-track to tape to CDs to VHS to that kind of thing. I'm also reminded of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
Right, when everything went to automation.
Dad.
Yes, Charlie?
Why aren't you at work?
Oh, well, the toothpaste factory thought they'd give me a bit of time off.
Like summer vacation?
Sure. Something like that.
In fact, it wasn't like a vacation at all. The upswing in candy sales had led to a rise in cavities, which led to a rise in toothpaste sales. With the extra money, the factory had decided to modernize, eliminating Mr. Bucket's job.
I think one of the things that industry has never done a good job of is the change management bit, is the how do we mitigate the loss of value or the loss of actual jobs. Are we smarter with that these days, do you think? As you look at this,
I don't know. I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of a lot of this stuff, right? So first of all, I don't think that like we're gonna get to like not focus on the mundane stuff and get to do the creative stuff instead. And I don't think that it's necessarily gonna eliminate all the work we have to do, and then we're just gonna have to figure out what to do with our time or whatever. It seems like the more efficient and more productive we get, the higher the expectations are, and the more we're driven to produce more and make more and work harder and stuff. So like I'm seeing, I'm working harder than I ever have with AI. It hasn't like carved out 30% of my time for me to, just go study philosophy or write poetry or something like that.
But has it reduced your need to rely on other people that would typically have done those things?
It is very true that it's like eliminated a lot of barriers when it comes to thinking about big ideas or whatever, whether it's like a software development project or a film. I can do a lot more of the different disciplines, at least when it comes to the prototyping of things or the envisioning of things or building concept art and stuff. I just wrapped up a job for Wikipedia. They were doing like a executive visioning session where they were talking about like 5 potential futures that Wikipedia could go. 3 of them were positive or 2 of them were positive and 3 of them were negative. They're trying to avoid the negative zones and hang out in the positive zones. And the 3 negative ones were like contributor decline, that the Wikipedia editors would grow old and not have brought on new ones, and that Wikipedia would go away because its contributors would die. Another one was like youth getting their information from news sources or something like that, And a third one was big tech giants siphoning off their resources because people are just scraping Wikipedia and putting it other places and stuff, And so they had me use Mid Journey to develop a whole bunch of concept art to explore each of these ideas of contributor decline, readership moving elsewhere, and tech eating their lunch and, draining all their resources. So I, developed a visual style using the Mid Journey in tuner, the tuner in Mid Journey, where you can essentially develop a unique fingerprinted visual style. So first I started by developing a visual style for each of the 5 directions. And then I used ChatGPT to take the concepts they were telling me, like contributor decline, and to break that into a bunch of phrases that represented a contributor decline. And so then I took those phrases back in the Mid Journey where I developed that style, and I generated a whole whack of images, like 1,000 images for each of these 5 concepts. Then I went back through them and curated like the 8 or 12 of those 1,000 that really told the story of, tech siphoning off their resources and Wikipedia, starving on the vine or something like that. Right. And then they, took these back in and they made them a part of their executive leadership visioning session where they printed them out and hung them on the wall, had them in their presentations and stuff, and were really able to like think through. So what would that have taken 10 years ago or before generative AI? It would have taken a team of writers, probably at least 5 different visual artists. How long would it have taken to generate, 1,000 different ideas or whatever? And so on one hand, you can say you stole a job from a team of writers and visual artists. Is that really what I did? Is that really what Wikipedia did? Or would that never have happened before because they had $1,500 in their budget, not $150,000 in their budget, right? Yeah. So in this way, it lowered all these barriers. It allowed me to be a conceptual artist that could envision alternative realities and then share them with an executive team who could make some decisions based on that stuff.
That's pretty powerful stuff. I always will struggle with what about the little guy, but
I don't think my mind's made up, and like I'm a Sagittarius. I can hold 2 opposing ideas simultaneously and articulate both of them and believe them as well, And so it's like, I think this is kind of similar to like the whole desktop publishing versus graphic design thing. When desktop publishing came out in like the 80s and early 90s, people said that it was going to kill the graphic design industry or profession, right? And I guess it sort of did. People aren't laying things out on boards with tape and rulers and type and stuff, but didn't it actually like elevate design? Isn't design more important and well known? I mean, probably everyone can name a designer or some design that they like, and I don't know that that's always been the case. So I think that probably desktop publishing elevated design in some way. It made us all literate in design. And so the tools of the design trade changed. They don't look anything like they used to, but I don't think it killed design.
That's a really great analogy, because in that world, I do remember having to go to the printer to make business cards, and now I could do them at home. But there was always a limit to how professional I could do it at home, and the industry adapted. And so they were the ones that had the larger scale printers, and they were the ones that had still the ability to do it at scale, whereas the general prosumer would never have that chance. So I guess in that sense, the industry adapts, and the folks that would typically be out of a role are still fulfilling that craft, but with better technology at a scale that we still can't.
Yeah, I kind of think about photography too, like one could argue that because everyone has a mobile phone in their pocket, and these phones are good. I mean, and they're not just like a camera, they're a whole computer. When you press the click on the camera, all sorts of software is going off to make sure that it takes an awesome photo. In many cases, it takes better photos than my big fancy professional camera for just a real point and click type situation. So you might think that like in that scenario, professional photographers wouldn't really be as required because everyone's got fancy camera phone in their pocket. But man, I think we're consuming more images than ever, and photographers are, been pretty busy for the last few years. It remains to be seen what the role for photographers is in the future. I think, I think a lot of it is going to be automated. I think of like some of the events that I photograph and stuff, or like a sports event.
Right.
I think pretty soon, man, there's just going to be a post in the middle of the whole stadium with like 5 360 cameras on it, and it's going to just capture everybody all the time. And you can just go check out at the souvenir booth at the end and, scan the QR code and get your night at the Vancouver Grizzlies game or whatever, like just you and your person. And it just came from that, big camera in the sky or something like that. I don't think we're going to have human photographers for most scenarios for very long.
Really?
No. I heard of just last week, man, there's a big company in Vancouver called Article. They're an online furniture company. Article had a in-house photography team. They had photographers. That, well, you remembered it because it was up until 3 weeks ago they had it. They just shut down. They're the first company I know to shut down their real life photography department to instead build their photography studio in AR and VR and AI. So they're retraining their team, and they're also hiring CGI designers, AI programmers, and like 3D designers and stuff. So yeah, I think everyone should get really clear on the value that they provide the world. Actually,
That's another interesting take. I mean, we're taking our value for granted across the board, and maybe in that process becoming a little complacent and paving the way for not replacement, just enhancement.
Well, I don't want to call it complacency, because I want to bring empathy to the table best I can. Like, imagine a guy our age who lives in Los Angeles. He's a voiceover actor or something like that, and he owns a house in Malibu that he's paid for by royalties on his voice acting career or whatever. That guy probably is like, what the fuck is going on for me? Because right now I can go to 11 Labs and I can, make anybody's voice in the whole wide world and, do it pretty cheaply and stuff. And so I'm sure there's still a role for voice people, but they're probably going to want to ask themselves how they can use AI in their careers and what value they really have to offer. It's changing everything. And I think the more that we can be open to that and like curate a sense of like curiosity around it and some flexibility, it'll serve us. Whoever told us that we could have the same career for our whole life? I mean,
so it's interesting that we talked about voiceovers, and you and I talked about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Is that part of this one-man show here is some automation. A lot of the post-production that we talked about is definitely using automated tools that I would typically have gone to Fiverr or Upwork to find, including the voiceover for the end of this show. So I did use AI with the intention of having this AI voice be the closer for the credits. And I was fine with that until I heard it, and then I thought it wasn't organic enough. And I deferred to a real-life human being. And that real-life human being is doing it right now, doing an amazing job. But she did also point out that she was seeing the loss in the industry, that her funnel was getting smaller and smaller because the attention to detail isn't there for everybody, where you notice the nuances of the human voice, and I'm guessing it's going to get better. But from her perspective as a freelancer that has done amazing work for NPR and CBS, is concerned about her funnel shrinking, and grateful that someone like me was old school and wanted to have it done.
Yeah, man, I can imagine. I mean, there will be certain things in which it'll make sense to hire a human for those things and certain things where it'll make sense to use AI.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed, but like the AI, the voice on hold for the banks and the telecoms has gotten a lot better lately.
Are those all AI?
It seems so. Yeah, it seems like they are. A, they sound way better. B, they understand you a lot more.
Right.
It's a big improvement.
It's just, I mean, okay, so it just reminds me of the conflict that we are still having with, is Siri listening to us? Mm-hmm. Is Alexa listening to us? Right? The theories, whether they're founded, that we are being listened to. We're at this crossroads where we need to accept that this is happening, but we're not culturally quite there yet. Do you think that's more in the business side of thing with Big Brother watching and less so in the art world? Or as you're seeing it with regenerative AI?
I think we live in a mass surveillance culture. We're being monitored all the time by all sorts of people. Who knows? I mean, I actually think that we should be told who's monitoring us and when. That seems fair. If we're going to be monitored, maybe let us know what you got, and let me have access to what you got on me too. You know, like, okay,
right.
You're going to record my face and my voice because I'm in public. Well, where can I go see my face and my voice or something like that? Or how do I know who's recording my face and my voice and stuff like that? So I definitely have a problem with the kind of surveillance culture we live in general. So as it comes to these AIs and stuff, particularly the generative AI, like all the tools from OpenAI, most of the ones we're talking about here, these things have existed for a while, but in many cases, they were only the property and domain of like governments and big corporations and stuff. And so a lot of this is the democratization of it as well, us getting our hands on these tools.
But the downside is, and I want to share a clip with you, is that when we democratize some of these things, there's always going to be somebody, and there will be more of them, that uses it for not the best of examples. And I'm talking about a mother of a cheerleader using AI to create a deep fake of the competition, essentially to further her child's career.
Yeah.
It's a troubling new take on cyberbullying. A mom in Pennsylvania is accused this morning of using so-called deep fakes to anonymously harass members of her daughter's cheerleading team.
I think I was just so much like in shock with everything going on. Like I couldn't really comprehend like what was going on.
Maddie Heim says after getting several threatening calls and texts from unknown numbers, some even saying she should take her own life, her cheer coaches told Maddie they received this video that supposedly showed her vaping. She and her mom shared it with us. They say it's fake.
So, I mean, it could be used as a toy, right? And it started out as a toy. That Tom Cruise video that we'll play in a bit was very much just what could we do for fun,
right?
And then that turned into the Obama clip.
It got me thinking about my full-time employees and their ability to survive on $8 an hour in New York City. And foremost in all of our minds has been the loss and the grief felt by the people of Orlando.
And so the intention was that was just for fun and not really a threat yet.
Right.
But it's morphed into, like everything else, somebody at some point is going to make use of it in the worst way, whether it's a mother in California or a foreign agent. Do we have a responsibility to provide some oversight into this process? You mentioned, let me know where my stuff is. And there was talk about software that would allow us as a user to reverse engineer a video to see if it was indeed fake. Is that helpful, or is that also likely to be abused?
Interesting that you bring up the abuse. So sometimes people talk about like the existential threats from AI. They talk about Skynet and Terminator and stuff like that, you know, and I think about that. I try to think about if that's true. Should we worry about it? You know, I don't want to just dismiss it out of hand as like, oh, that's sci-fi, because sci-fi is the lens through which we use. It's the literature tool that we use to examine things that haven't happened yet or whatever and stuff. So, you know, as I think about it, I'm actually not that worried about some of the like rogue actors and stuff that you're talking about, the bad mom or North Korea or something like that. You know, I'm actually worried about the systems of control that we put into place that we use as justification that we're going to try to control those bad actors. Think of it as like the Patriot Act. Remember when the U.S. Patriot Act came around? It severely limited the rights of Americans, and they surveilled Americans and stuff. And they did it under the auspices of trying to fight terrorism.
Right.
And so I'm worried that, under the auspices of trying to fight bad AIs, that we're going to implement a very rigid system of control, maybe America or maybe some, multinational governments or something like that, and that has the potential to be the existential threat, the Terminator. I mean, it could have our identity in it. It could have our tax information in it. Whether or not we get access to social services or not. That system of control will probably be the thing that people fear.
Yeah. Yet we charge like full on towards it. We're all embracing it.
Well, let's just pause here for 1 second. I think there's an important distinction to be made. So I'm very critical of the corporations out there that are rushing to market as fast as they can with whatever they can, and essentially creating like a gold rush arms race where they're like not really thinking it all through, and they're not really working together as a country or a planet or a interdisciplinary consortium or something to ask like, where are we going? How fast are we going there? Let's figure this out and put some guardrails in together. They're just going crazy, and they're going for profit. And we see that with like the Sam Altman thing and the Microsoft Azure and that whole debacle around Sam getting kicked off the board and stuff. Now that's different than exuberances in guys like me who are like, oh, look at all the cool art that I can make with this stuff. One is like talking about like AGI, artificial general intelligence on a different level, and it's about profit and systems of control. Another one is like using these tools and stuff like that. Using ChatGPT to redo your resume, if you're exuberant about that, that's not just rushing headstrong into the future or whatever, but I am very critical. We do see that happening. But I don't think that people should feel bad or be worried that they're contributing to the downfall of mankind by experimenting with these tools or running alongside them and see how they can integrate them into their practice.
Right, for sure. Looking at the little clip that we had in the beginning of this show, it looked real.
What is real, Rob?
What is real? I mean, we're having a great organic conversation that's going in a certain way. It's got ebb and flow. It's got speech deficiencies and whatnot. In a highly perfected piece like that, do we lose the organicness of conversation? Will AI ever be able to have the kind of nuances that you and I have had today, whether they're good or bad nuances?
I think anytime you compare a human giving a 1 hour speech to an AI giving a 1 hour speech, we're going to prefer the human giving the 1 hour speech. So if that's the use case, the human will always win. But I bet there's a bunch of other ways that an AI can be useful. Yeah. We were thinking yesterday, we were talking, and it was like, well, it makes sense to keep hosting your long form podcast with your human body, connecting with people, talking with people. That's a great use of your brain and your body and stuff. Right. But what about like daily scripted headlines? What about like your video avatar reading the headlines daily? Like maybe some people want that. Maybe you want to put that out in the world for some reason. And so it's like you never would have time to read and edit and do that each day, or you could even do it weather reports 3 times a day or something like that. So it's like, that.
So we did talk about that yesterday, and then I right away went to that, but it doesn't feel organic. It doesn't feel like part of the show. And
it's less organic.
But then you said that's why you have to let your audience know.
That's right.
Is that contrary to what we just talked about not being overly legislative with letting people know when something is fake or not?
Well, so that's different. I don't think that the government should tell us you have to stamp this. And I don't think societally we are going to decide that you must disclose.
Okay, so
however, me trying to build trust with my audience, with my community, with my network, of course I want them to know. Because I don't want them to feel like, oh man, that thing Kris did's awesome. Oh, fuck, that wasn't him. That's a bad feeling inside. I tricked them. I don't want them to feel that. So when I was talking about, and we see that in other places. So I heard just recently about a New York City mayoral candidate that recorded himself speaking Yiddish and Mandarin and sent a bunch of robocalls around to targeted communities in New York, speaking those languages and not disclosing that, I don't actually speak these languages.
Right.
And so, maybe he felt cool. He was able to get through to these, Jewish communities that and maybe got their attention because it was him speaking, their language. But as soon as they found out that he didn't speak that, politicians need all the credibility help they can get, and tricking your constituency into making them think you speak a language you don't, that doesn't seem very cool. So no, I think we should tell people.
We talked earlier about the dangers of having a legislative wrapping over top of the idea of AI and deep fakes and whatnot. But I feel like we're already in a space where we're doing that. I think of social media posts these days, definitely with the Palestine-Israeli conflict. There are algorithms at play that are fact-checking what is being put out there and blocking the dissemination of this freely generated speech. So are we not already on the way to having that wrapper on top of a digital video of myself? This isn't Rob Anthony speaking. This is a deep fake we think that you should know. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I totally know the stuff that you're talking about on Facebook, where it says the information that you're reading has been known to be inaccurate or something like that. Right. And I do find that super useful. My old buddy Kevin Kelly called me up the other night and he's like, "Hey Chris, have you seen that thing on Facebook about Elon Musk says starting the new universal basic income program, and a guy made $200 yesterday and $300?" And I'm like, "Kevin, that's a well-known scam or whatever." It's like, "Well, why do these things keep showing up if they're known to be scams?" I'm like, "Because they're interesting to people like you, and people can't tell the difference." And he's like, "Yeah, I almost sent them money." I'm like, "Well, you just answered your own question,
Right.
And so I do think it's important to flag that kind of stuff, because there's people of all different aptitudes and skill levels and abilities who are using these tools. And so if we have something that's like well known to be harmful, then I think we should flag it. How do we know it's a deep fake?
So I want to share the perspective of reverse engineering these deep fakes as a tool to aid the public that I came across, and maybe we can chat about that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I think that it's an arms race, right? It's like, I build a great deep fake. I build a great deep fake detector. I built the deep fake that gets around the detector. There's an update for the detector. So it feels like it's just like an arms race back and forth all the time. Right. There will always be some things that we know are fake and some things that we don't know are fake.
Right.
And what happens if something that's fake gets stamped as not fake? What happens then?
Yeah, and at some point, we need to take ownership of determining what's real or what isn't, right? I mean, that's the whole idea of the fake news concept, is that we are so prone to just believing what we're reading versus taking the time to check out the facts elsewhere, take in different news sites. So to your point, we can
can't even do that anymore. Where do you, it just assumes a whole different journalistic model. It's like, okay, you're going to fact check. Well, where are you going to go get your facts? What made those things facts to begin with? This is the whole thing about fake people, fake entities, and the, falling apart of our institutions. It's like, for instance, think about yourself as a school or a teacher. Like, how are they going to teach anyone anything? All our models are built around our educational models are built around a whole different world. It's like people are sitting there trying to be like, "Oh, this kid turned in an essay that was generated by ChatGPT. That kid's a cheater with no ethics." It's
right.
Like, well, you're offering an education that's irrelevant to these humans. It's easier for them to, do this than it is for them to get down with your program or whatever. So how about it's on you to deliver some education that's worth folks, showing up for or whatever, and not holding on to hierarchical models, where top-down type education stuff. It's an exciting time where all of mankind's art and information is given to us on a variety of platforms as freely as it's ever been. We're more intellectually powerful and intelligent than we've ever been, augmented by technology. It's time for teachers and schools and institutions to step it up.
Yeah. Time for the gotcha question, which I always promise I will never, ever ask somebody. Sure. But is there a clear line as to what AI should be used for and what it should never be used for? Or is that already too much policing of the notion of AI?
Mm-hmm. It's really good at recognizing patterns in things, especially really, really large data sets, better than humans at that kind of thing. What should it never be used for?
I just think of the classic robot code, right? A robot shall never kill a human. That's baked into what we think robot AI technology is supposed to do.
Yeah.
But we're getting closer to, is that actually sustainable?
Yeah. I heard some guy talking about some of those things, those guardrails, and I thought about them a little bit. But unfortunately, a lot of people think we're already past most of those ones. It's like AIs shouldn't be allowed to talk to other AIs. AI shouldn't be allowed to update themselves. Oh, and they shouldn't be released on the public internet. Those are like, that's how you control them. You don't let them update themselves. You don't let them talk to other AIs, and you don't let them give them real-time access to the world's information. And we did all that shit already. So
all right, so Skynet, here we come.
I was shocked recently. I had a bit of an epiphany. I started an email newsletter like 9 months ago, and I'm using this Beehive software to manage it. And so, we often put our username and info password in there, and we say, yeah, send me a cookie, whatever. And I never really realized exactly what is available on the other side of that cookie on the back end to the site. So the other day I was checking out my newsletter, and I looked at someone who had received 10 of my emails, and I clicked through, and the stuff that I could see about the actions they had taken with their name associated, I couldn't believe how much data I had on this person's trail all through my website, all through my emails and stuff. It was quite incredible, very revealing. And I was like, holy shit, I am leaving a crazy breadcrumb trail of data behind me when I'm out there in the world. And I just started to think about being a little bit more careful with the trail that I was leaving.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, it actually fits very nicely into my, I'm an introvert, socially awkward human that now has a platform or a tool that makes it possible for me to engage even less. Is there an element of social community that it's not at risk, but is diminished when we take people out of our lives for cursory roles and tasks that now we can assign to AI?
Yes, Rob. Absolutely, sir. Dude, I think that the alienation and loneliness that you're speaking of has to do with a lot more than COVID. I think it has to do with politics and with phones and with online porn and video games and all these rabbit holes that are like these digital things that we isolate ourselves in and retreat from connection with the rest of the world and stuff. So I absolutely think that this is something that we should be thinking about and keeping on the top of our mind. How do we counteract or resist? It seems like our technology is pushing us in this direction by its very nature. Like Marshall McLuhan style, the medium is the message. It's not what the phone says, it's the phone itself that's disconnecting us from the world, and stuff. And so I think that we should be aware. And I'll tell you, I didn't see myself telling this story here on your podcast today. Have you seen that movie, Her, or heard about it?
No.
It's a Joaquin Phoenix movie from about 10 years ago where he falls in love with an AI.
Okay.
An android, I think, but an AI. And, it's kind of, it's interesting and it's, near-term sci-fi or whatever, but it's kind of nonsensical, because it's like, well, who could actually fall in love with a computer or whatever, right? Well, I've been evaluating my own behavior over like the last 6 months. I've been single for about a year, and for the last 6 months, I sure haven't been putting a lot of energy into any of that, into dating or even maintaining friendships with people that are potentially dating, material or whatever. It's like, it's as if I'm dating the AIs. It's like I fall asleep thinking about it. I wake up thinking about it. When I'm not messing with the AI, I'm thinking about when I get done whatever I'm doing so I can go mess with it. It's like a lot of the things that actually on a deeper emotional connection level that you often get from companionship, I've been finding I've been sharing my ideas, getting feedback with the AIs, and like, so all of a sudden it's like the Joaquin Phoenix movie made a little bit more sense. And clearly they can't feel, the AIs can't feel, and clearly they can't touch. But I don't know what else they can't do.
Will they ever be able to do those human things that we need? And so again, that sounds hypocritical because I'm an introvert. I run away from personal interactions.
Yeah.
So for example, COVID for me was, I don't want to say a godsend because it was a horrific experience, but I felt comfortable in that space. Nothing had really changed for me.
Yeah.
But I also recognized the deeper we got into it, that wasn't healthy.
You just felt less pressure to go out and be involved with professional networks that you really didn't care about or something.
Exactly. And when I think about this AI bit, I'm definitely going to use it to death. One, because I can't afford a team, but it takes the weight of learning how to engage and interact away from me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be Joaquin Phoenix. I don't want, you know what I mean? I don't want to, but I could see it's very tempting.
Well,
very tempting.
For me, I guess one of the good things about it is it's allowed me to be more intentional and mindful in seeking out those connections in my life or whatever. It's like, I'm like, yeah, Kris, you should spend some time with some friends. And I've been proactively calling people and setting up dates and like appointments and stuff like that. I'm having, you know, Christmas drinks with some family friends tomorrow night and like made some plans for later in the week. It's like, so it has forced me to be more conscious about it because I am not exactly always just running into people in the same way that I used to.
We have the ability to build community around everything that we would want to, right? And that's the idea of the metaverse as being a community that still brings us together. Is that an aspect of AI that we should also just get ready for? The idea of the metaverse and these virtual worlds where, yes, we're doing things digitally, but we're doing it digitally together in these virtual spaces.
Oh, that's very interesting. I do look forward to a day when our hanging out online does have a little bit more of a hanging out with your friends online feel to it. And I remember the times where I felt like that online, like when Flickr first started, it legit felt like hanging out with your friends online. People would hang out, upload photos, comment on them. It was very early social media, and it literally felt like hanging out with your friends on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss those days.
But, you know, I also think that community is not just coming in the form of AR and VR and stuff like that, you know. I believe that, you know, like when it comes to creative professionals and stuff, Rob, this ain't the only change we're going to see, man. We're going to see probably 5 more technological changes between now and the end of our career. And so if I think about that, I try to think about like both the short-term needs and the long-term needs of my colleagues and the people in this space who are being threatened by AI. And like in the short term, we need to do some skills upgrades and we need to do some learning and learn how to master these tools and stuff like that, right? Yeah. But maybe in the long term, how about building like a resilient network of other people who are along that same journey with you and stuff, who you're consciously putting together a professional network of other creative people who are figuring out how to use AI and stuff. And so I think it's a mix of both those things. And I definitely wouldn't necessarily, succumb to the inevitability of the erosion of community or something like that. You know, I definitely would fight against it and stuff. Yep. But I think there will be a lot of other societal and cultural institutions that we watch go up in flames one after another.
Like, I mean, give me an example.
Well, check it out, bro. It's not just the deep fakes that you showed me that are really the problem. I don't think that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're about to enter into the age of fake people where you're not going to be able to tell the difference. It's already happening, but soon you're not going to be able to tell the difference online between somebody who's real and somebody who's fake. And then it's like, well, what happens then? What happens if you can't tell if somebody's real or somebody's fake? Yeah. Trust drops to zero and, community is undermined, conversation, dialogue, a lot of those things are undermined or whatever, and stuff. And like, we're very close. You really shouldn't believe anything you've seen that wasn't created right in front of your own face. Like if you didn't watch it happen, how can you possibly believe it? When I first was experimenting with my voice clone, I thought it'd be cute to write my mom some poetry using ChatGPT and record it in my 11 Labs and send it to her. And I sent it to her and she liked it, I guess. But a couple days later, I was like, hey, Mom, what'd you think of that deep fake poem thing I sent you? And she's like, the what? I was like, the fake me thing that sent you that. And she started crying.
Really?
Dude, it was a dick move. Imagine not being able to distinguish between your real son and not your real son. Like, how would that make you feel? If you're like already living in this world where you're like, shit's changing fast. I'm worried about what's going on. I don't know what to trust. And now I can't tell the sound of my own son's voice.
That's actually frightening. And it's not frightening, but that's deep.
Yeah.
But it also reminds me of an industry that I believe has tanked. And I remember the sentiment being exactly the same because I did use it. And it was the idea of digital greeting cards. Mm-hmm. So that was a massive thing, I think about 8 years ago or so. Everybody was doing it. And really what it did was replace the good old fashioned, I care about you. I'm going to take the time to find the card that matches you perfectly, write it by hand. And the value wasn't so much in the card. The value was in the fact that this was a human act.
Yeah.
And then we all shifted to this digital postcard thing.
Yeah.
And we tried it. And I consider it to have tanked. for me, it was because it lost that this is my child, this is my son. That's a really interesting story.
I know. Also, I think probably one of the big differences for me when receiving one of those cards, if I think about the difference in value in receiving one of them, the paper one, they had to think of it a week ago. And they had to go to the store and then bring it home and write it and then go back to the post office, probably all the while thinking about my birthday or something like that, you know? Yeah. The digital one, they might have just woke up this morning and seen that Facebook posted it's my freaking birthday and shot something off in the moment to, you know, like pretend like they remembered or something, you know? So I always, the paper one is infinitely more valuable.
Yeah. Circling back to you as an early adopter, you were early to the desktop publishing, you were early to the Flickr world, you're early to this generative AI concept and already ahead of the curve. Where do you see it going from here?
I think a lot of this AI is going to get baked right into the tools that we're already using, and we're not even really going to see it there. So I think that's going to be something that's going to happen pretty quickly. It's going to go invisible and under the surface. And we're seeing it already. Like Facebook wants to write your posts for you. Gmail wants to write your Gmails for you and stuff. And so I think it'll continue to get embedded more deeply into things. I think it will one by one, like we saw the internet, first it changed retail, e-commerce, you know, and then it started to change, you know, online education. But one by one, it lined up every industry and every profession from, you know, dating to design to hiring freelancers to everything, you know, and to stock photography. It changed every single industry. Yeah. So I think it's gonna take some time, but we're gonna see it change every single industry, overturn the apple cart essentially. Yeah. I think a lot of the things, maybe if you really want me to like, the only things I can see that are clear to me is that we're going to face a lot of challenges. We're going through a period of rapid growth, and man, these tools amplify human power and intelligence. So it's probably going to be a period of extremes in some ways, extreme new forms of art being created, new forms of misinformation and deception and scams being created, you know, amplifying heroes, amplifying villains. We're absolutely not ready, bro. Yeah. You know, one of the things I found really interesting is I heard Sam Altman recently responding to a critique about the whole like releasing things upon the world as fast as they are. And they were like, yo, you're releasing stuff too fast. Why don't you slow it down? And he was like, yo, I'm right now showing you only a tiny little window into what the capabilities and capacity of this thing are today. If I was to slow it down even more and like essentially you can't handle the truth. If you saw all the thing, it would essentially melt everyone's brains and erode all of society and everything would, you know, fucking break or whatever, right? So he's like, I got to show you this stuff now so that you can wrap your heads around it and start to evolve. And so, yeah, I don't think we are necessarily ready, but I don't think that matters.
I'm not sure if it's a fair comparison, but when I think about the evolution of music, we went from vinyl records, which were something that most people could afford to be involved with. So music was highly democratized, right?
Sure.
We shifted to MP3s, and the medium became more technological. And as such, and as I've seen, the more technologically advanced we become, the less accessible these amazing things are for the folks downstream.
This is such an important issue, man. It's like speaks to the digital divide that we talked about when internet access came around and stuff. And it's like, well, what if it's not distributed evenly or whatever? You know, I'll turn the question back around on you for a second. Do you think access to artificial intelligence should be a universal human right?
But I feel like anything that we've decided as a society is open and free for everyone to use should be accessible by everyone to the same degree. I know that's
because if we don't enshrine it as a human right, won't corporations and rich people just dominate it? And this ain't just like a small thing. Like, you know, if certain people get access to some of these tools and other people don't, the people that do get access to them are going to pull way out ahead and create an insurmountable competitive advantage over the people that don't have access to them. So I think pretty quickly we're gonna have to figure out how do we make this a part of the UNDP or something like that, you know, and enshrine in some sort of rights. And then it's like, well, do artificial intelligence themselves give rights? I mean, or what rights should we give them?
That's a fair extension, because if your twin getting your condo in Florida is an extension of all that's you and can think and extrapolate, shouldn't your rights inherently attach itself to that if it knows you that well?
I don't know.
I saw a headline, and I don't remember where it was, but somebody coined the idea of digital AIs being the end of art as we know it.
Yeah.
And then my thought was, it's just an evolution of art. Art has changed in some way since the beginning of time, but is it just an evolution?
I don't know,
or does
man.
it replace?
Both of these things are right in some ways. I mean, imagine how pissed off you would be if you had some very distinct visual illustration style, and people came to you because that was your very, very, very particular style. And now I can go in to Mid Journey and say, a West Coast sunset in the style of Roy Henry Vickers. And it doesn't go steal his work, but it can create work that looks very similar. It knows his style, and so that would probably, really piss you off or whatever. I could see how it would feel like a direct threat.
Like the ultimate in digital misappropriation.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, like culture always builds on the past. A lot of the songs that we have now are from, blues and folk music from back in the day in America. Things are, that's what art is, sedimentary layer upon sedimentary layer, and that's why the modern art world is so, in many ways, disconnected from mainstream sensibilities of what's beautiful and stuff, is because it's not necessarily offered up as like, yo, this is beautiful. It's like a response to that last thing, which was a response to that other thing.
Right,
you have to really be in the dialogue to understand where this fits in and why that person's showing me a banana peel pasted to a wall at all. I think way more people view themselves as creative than ever before. And when I think of creative professionals, I think of a lot more disciplines. A lot of people do this switcheroo in their head. When they hear creative, they think art. And I don't necessarily think those two things one-to-one. I'm definitely a creator in lots of different ways, and I'm an artist in a couple of ways. But I think coders are creators. They generate, unique strings of phrases and symbols and stuff, and I think that, journalists are creators and marketing strategists are creators. And so I think of that as a lot of a broader category than I used to. I think we're all pretty creative.
So on the topic of creative, as CEO of Future Proof Creatives, what does that entail?
Future Proof Creatives is a monthly workshop series that I run online and then here in Vancouver as well. And it's targeted at creative professionals like the people I've mentioned, illustrators, designers, and photographers who are watching AI come after their industry and come after their jobs. And so people are, I think burying your head in the sand in response to AI isn't going to suit you. And thinking that it's going to save the world and you're going to make $1 million off it, I don't think is the answer either. It's somewhere in the middle. And so I'm creating a community of creative professionals that are coming together to upgrade their skills and create connections and learn together. And we've got a Discord server with like 450 people on it. And we're just, it's broken into channels like art and AI and music. And, there's a bunch of musicians who are experimenting with AI tools, both for creating music, but also for distributing their music or writing AI effects that change the outputs of their instruments and stuff. And they're sharing those types of tips and tricks there online. And so, Future Proof Creatives, man, it's a community of folks that are figuring this stuff out together.
I think there's a lot of people figuring that out. I'm definitely going to come by.
Yeah, man.
A couple of years ago, or was it last year, there was a hologram or a video put out of Tupac and Biggie, I think it was. Was it at Burning Man?
I think it was at Coachella.
Mm-hmm. And the reaction was pretty visceral. There was a "this is amazing" reaction, and then there was a "you don't touch the holy grail that is Tupac or the Beatles."
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, will we get over that, do you think?
I mean, I think we're already getting over it in some ways. For sure, the first time you see a dead man walking, you're like, what the fuck is this, right?
Yeah, right.
But now, and this is the cultural change that, Sam Altman and other people are talking about, is like, well, now if you see it, you're like, yo, that's just a hologram of Biggie. Because we kind of like have a concept that could possibly exist in this world. We don't see a hologram and think, oh, there's Biggie's ghost.
Yeah.
We have this concept now that holograms can exist and bring our favorite artists back from the dead or whatever. And so we're pretty adaptable. We're pretty flexible as humans, and other things move really slow. And I think the things that move slow are ethics and like morality. We're trying to piece all this crazy new shit into very old, tried and true moral structures and stuff. And and we're finding the fit is kind of hard.
Do you think, I think you mentioned earlier, but do you think that we should always know when something is fake? Are we going to get to the point where you have warnings on a package of cigarettes about the risks or whatnot? Are we getting to a point, or should we get to a point where we announce clearly that what you're watching isn't real?
You know, there's been some talk about that, even at like the congressional level and stuff. And to be honest, I think it's ridiculous. We've already decided this.
How else would your mother know that it's not you?
We've already decided this. Do we put a warning for young women on the cover of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue that says, danger, this is not what a real fucking human body looks like. This is not what you should hold up as your ideal beauty standard. No, we recognize that those images are harmful to our children and we put them out there anyway.
Right.
We've already decided this. We put fake people out into the world all the time. We've already decided we're image oriented. I don't see that changing. And in fact, you've obviously hit a nerve here, right? The whole idea that we're going to layer ethics on top of AI, it's like, go fucking do some ethical shit right now and let the AI train itself on your ethical behavior, your ethical institutions, your ethical corporations, your ethical communities, and the way you relate to one another. It's like, man, if we're hoping that philosophers are going to come around and sprinkle some ethics on top of AI and save us all, then that's a pretty scary place to be in, man. We need to.
I cannot imagine being the parent of somebody in grade 3 or 4. I don't know how I'd start the conversation with a child as to do the work to determine what is real and what isn't, when the folks creating it have zero either compulsion or impetus to actually share that. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling a little more dread for some reason.
Well, I'm pretty optimistic. I trust youths. I think they're going to figure out what works for them. I think that we see them rejecting some things that we thought were cool, like Facebook and other things, you know, and they're having a lot of their conversations more privately and stuff. Yep. And so I do think it's both like probably the most exciting time ever to be a youth and probably scary as well, you know, super scary and stuff. I heard a story, I think out of New Zealand or Australia last week, where someone sent a bunch of junior high school deep fake porn around, you know, or whatever. All the, you know, just imagine living in a world where any photo, any video that you have ever released of yourself could be used to create propaganda essentially against yourself without your knowledge. It's like, it's pretty crazy, really. But
I think what I'm hearing about this future-proof creative is that it is bringing people together and people that will need help and guidance and whatnot. But there's another level to this whole shindy that you've got going on that actually brings a global community together. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to tell you about this thing that I'm cooking up for next year called the Fatale Festival, the Future of Art, Technology, and Alternative Living Experiment. Say that again, sorry, because I went right to fatal. Fatale is an acronym, and it stands for the Future of Art, Technology, and Alternative Living Experiment. And it is intended to be a ideas festival. I'm bringing a bunch of, you know, business people from around the world together here in Vancouver to explore how AI is changing kind of everything around us. And so I was at this event called Dent the Future that I've been working at for like 10 years. And I was just having the best time. And I was like, how did this group get so strong? How did this community coalesce in the way that it did? And I realized that, you know, like 10 years have passed that we've all been lifting each other up and supporting and growing together. And I've always wanted to do like a festival or an event or something. I've been blessed. I got to work for like the TED Talks and for South by Southwest. And I've had all these great...
Dude, you've done a lot.
In the event space, I've been to all the cool ones, you know? And I've sat there in the very front row with a camera in front of my face being like, this is what works and this is what doesn't. Right. And so I'm now, you know, I'm in the middle of my career and I'm
time to do your own thing.
Yeah, man, I want to do my own thing. So... you know, I'm excited that you're coming, but I'm excited to bring a lot of my friends into Vancouver and to mix it up there.
What are the dates? Do you have dates yet?
August 8th through 11th, 2024.
So it's done.
Yeah, it's happening, man.
This is happening.
Yeah, it's happening. We got
indoor, outdoor. You have the venue, or
yeah. Well, I've got a couple sponsors pulled together so far. We're going to be doing some up at the Sea to Sky Gondola on the top of the mountain there in Squamish. Nice. I also brought on the Vancouver Biennale, the outdoor public sculpture festival, as a major sponsor, and they've given me some dedicated space in their warehouse. So some of the things will be in this new space that I'm creating that. Only you and almost nobody else has ever seen.
I think it's really cool because we're talking about digital and AI. That the Vancouver Biennale is actually behind you in these ventures so strongly. You'd think that they'd be, hang on, you're infringing on our structural physical art world, but they're all into this.
They're amazingly supportive. They, the Vancouver Biennale, if nothing else, has really been able to identify young emerging talent when they see it and get involved before they blow up. Over and over and again, you see Barry Mowat, the curator for the Biennale, commission our work with some artists, and it's sometimes their first public or second public work, and now you can barely even talk to the people. They're everywhere all the time in the biggest cities in the world, really blown up. So I got to thank them for believing in what we're doing, for falling behind and being a founding partner. It is really
and where can folks find out about dates, tickets, events?
Yeah, totally. Well, I've been registering some domain names lately and putting some websites on the internet, but on social media, I have all the handles for Future Proof Creatives and futureproofcreatives.com. And then also Fatale Festival, so at Fatale Festival on Instagram and Threads and all that kind of stuff, and fatalefestival.com on the web. The best thing you can do right now is sign up for the newsletter. Let me send you some updates as we get them out. I'm launching registrations on January 1st, which is just
January 1st.
Yeah, it's just around the corner.
All out.
Yeah, man, tell me about it, buddy. Yeah, tell me about it. I just graduated from this Google incubator, which is where I developed all these ideas and incorporated my company and set up my bank accounts and really, doing this thing right. And I just graduated last Thursday, so I'm in execution mode and launched January 1.
You know what? So you're such an inspiration, and I do mean that because we're both at a stage where a lot of people would say, I'm 47, 50, done all I can do, learned all I can, but you just continue to just look to the future. Everything about you has actually been about the future. The name of your company, was it the Future Dent Future?
Dent the Future, yeah. Yeah.
What is it about the future that honestly seems to have driven you from the outset?
I probably have my father to thank. He brought home an Apple IIc when I was 12 years old, and a Prodigy floppy disk, which was the bulletin board system that competed with AOL at the time. And so just from my formative years, a preteen, I was connecting with people online, starting to understand how the networks work and stuff. And so, it's a huge leg up to be well-versed in, technology and have access to tools. it creates great privilege, man. And I have to recognize that. I've been given access to stuff that very early, that really oriented my mind in a certain way.
Do you think in general, just philosophically, about the future a lot, independent of AI and in this world? But some of us are mired in the moment, which is nothing wrong with that. Some of us are stuck in the past, which is not a good idea. I feel like you've always been forward-thinking, development personally, probably. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I do my best to live in the present, and I have, had to adopt some practices in order to do that. But yeah, man, I'm often thinking of the future, making plans, and just kind of daydreaming. Just kind of
right.
I definitely wake up every day feeling like things could be a little bit better than they are.
Yeah. Well, daydreams are one thing, but your dreams seem to become plans.
I feel super powerful, man. I feel like I know why I'm here and what I'm up to. So what else am I going to do with my time?
You're going to come back on this show. We're going to chat more about where the AI is going.
We're in for a wild ride, man. I don't know if it's going to be Skynet or not, but I definitely think that it's going to cause some upheaval,
On it.
All right.
Chris, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This episode of Are We Done Yet is brought to you by Rob Anthony Productions and is part of the OHEY TV network. Guest and audience statements have not been fact-checked or verified and do not necessarily reflect the thoughts and opinions of the show or the network. To learn more about OHEY TV and how to be a guest on one of our shows, visit ohey.tv.